Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome to today's Tolkien Times, a Prancing Pony podcast production. I'm the Man of the West. Thank you for joining me for First Stage Friday. Now, over the last couple of series, we've really been diving into the story of Tuor and his coming to Gondolin, as found in Unfinished Tales. Last week, Voronwë saw far off the mountains of his home, and he and Tuor made their way across the Brithiac under the watchful eyes of the Eagles of Manwë. This week, they draw ever nearer to Turgon and the hidden kingdom of Gondolin. On the far side of the ford, that's the Brithiac, they came to a gully, as it were the bed of an old stream, in which no water now flowed. Yet once, it seemed, a torrent had cloven its deep channel, coming down from the north out of the mountains of the Echoriath, and bearing thence all the stones of the Brithiac down into Sirion. "At last, beyond hope, we find it!" cried Voronwë. "See, here is the mouth of the dry river, and that is the road we must take." Then they passed into the gully, and as it turned north and the slopes of the land went steeply up, so its sides rose upon either hand, and Tuor stumbled in the dim light among the stones with which its rough bed was strewn. "If this is a road," he said, "it is an evil one for the weary." "Yet it is the road to Turgon," said Voronwë. "Then the more do I marvel," said Tuor, "that its entrance lies open and unguarded. I had looked to find a great gate and strength of guard." "That you shall yet see," said Voronwë. "This is but the approach. A road, I named it, yet upon it none have passed for more than 300 years, save messengers few and secret, and all the craft of the Noldor has been expended to conceal it, since the hidden people entered in. Does it lie open? Would you have known it if you had not had one of the hidden kingdom for a guide? Or would you have guessed it to be but the work of the weathers and the waters of the wilderness? And are there not the eagles, as you have seen? They are the folk of Thorondor, who dwelt once even on Thangorodrim, ere Morgoth grew so mighty, and dwell now in the mountains of Turgon since the fall of Fingolfin. They alone, save the Noldor, know the hidden kingdom, and guard the skies above it, though as yet no servant of the enemy has dared to fly into the high airs. And they bring much news to the king of all that moves in the lands without. Had we been orcs, doubt not that we should have been seized and cast from a great height upon the pitiless rocks." "I doubt it not," said Tuor, "but it comes into my mind to wonder also whether news will not now come to Turgon of our approach swifter than we, and if that be good or ill, you alone can say." "Neither good nor ill," said Voronwë, "for we cannot pass the guarded gate unmarked, be we looked for or no. And if we come there, the guards will need no report that we are not orcs. But to pass, we shall need a greater plea than that. For you do not guess, Tuor, the peril that we then shall face. Blame me not as one unwarned for what may then betide. May the power of the Lord of Waters be shown indeed, for in that hope alone have I been willing to guide you. And if it fails, then more surely shall we die than by all the perils of wild and winter." But Tuor said, "Forebode no more. Death in the wild is certain, and death at the gate is yet in doubt to me, for all your words. Lead me still on." Many miles they toiled on in the stones of the dry river, until they could go no further, and the evening brought darkness into the deep cleft. They climbed out, then onto the east bank, and they had now come into the tumbled hills that lay at the feet of the mountains. And looking up, Tuor saw that they towered up in a fashion other than that of any mountains that he had seen, for their sides were like sheer walls, piled each one above and behind the lower, as were they great towers of many-storied precipices. But the day had waned, and all the lands were grey and misty, and the vale of Sirion was shrouded in shadow. Then Voronwë led him to a shallow cave in a hillside that looked out over the lonely slopes of Dimbar, and they crept within, and there they lay hid, and they ate their last crumbs of food, and were cold and weary, but slept not. Thus did Tuor and Voronwë come in the dusk of the 18th day of Hisime, the 37th of their journey, to the towers of the Echoriath and the threshold of Turgon, and by the power of Ulmo escaped both the doom and the malice. So Tuor is a bit surprised that the road to Gondolin is, well, low-key just a gravel riverbed, really. No gate, no guard. Not yet, as Voronwë points out. But the nature of this road is intentional. All the craft of the Noldor has been expended to conceal it. It looks like the work of the weathers and the waters of the wilderness. Love that alliteration, by the way. And in fact, in the Silmarillion, it sounds like that's precisely what it is. The text says, "But there was a deep way under the mountains, delved in the darkness of the world by waters that flowed out to join the streams of Sirion. And this way Turgon found, and so came to the green plain amid the mountains." But hey, even if we didn't have the gate and a pretty well-disguised road, there are always the eagles. They know the way to Gondolin and are guarding the skies. Two interesting things in this paragraph. The first is the statement that as yet no servant of the enemy has dared to fly into the high airs. That is a reminder of the limitations, even of the dragons at this point, and a big reason why encircling mountains would indeed provide a nigh impenetrable defense for Gondolin. The other thing is Voronwë's statement that the eagles dwelt once even on Thangorodrim, ere Morgoth grew so mighty. Now, Christopher explains in the footnote that in all probability, the conception of Thorondor's dwelling at first upon Thangorodrim, which is found also in an early Silmarillion text, was later abandoned. Then we're reminded of the threat ahead. They could survive the orcs. They could survive the winter, only to be slain by the guards of Gondolin. Finally, they make it to a cave where they eat the last of their food 37 days after they left Vinyamar behind. And folks, that is it for today's First Stage Friday. And while this has been and will continue to be a long run, the day will come when I return to Fandom Fridays. So if you know anybody who should join me here for a future Fandom Friday, just email barliman@theprancingponypodcast.com. Folks, please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and a lot more. And join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times as we wrap up this week with Silmarillion Saturday. Podcast listeners, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast apps. If you're on YouTube, just subscribe to this channel to get all of the PPP productions. Be sure you're all following @PrancingPonyPod on social media. And finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.